What's up, everyone? So today we just got finished up with a training session here, and I was thinking about some stuff because we were talking in the training session about some of the things we were doing, and it's nice. So I have the luxury of working one-on-one with someone, and in this case, in a one-on-one setting, you can get away with a lot more that you can't necessarily get away with in a group setting. So let's take that with a grain of salt first and foremost. But the thing that came up that I thought was really interesting was that I was sitting there at one point in time, and the athlete was too, and we're kind of sitting down chatting in between sets. And I kind of looked at him and I was like, we can't, people don't do this. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, typically, like, when people train, they try and train the entire time nonstop. In other words, if you have an hour-long session and you do an exercise, say a bench press, during your rest time, you might do like 2 or 3 accessory movements, whether it's like a dead bug or a lat pull down, you might superset, whatever it might be. But you typically fill the gap in between that bench press and, the next set. And I was talking to him, I was like, yeah, we don't do that, do we? He's like, well, no, we don't. And I was like, well, it makes sense. And we kind of got talking about it. And my belief behind that is if I am trying to put so much emphasis on, say, a bench press or whatever movement we're doing that day, in between the sets are a time for actual recovery, to take a break. It is mentally taxing to try and exert a lot of effort every single set. And so I don't need to fill the time in between these sets with, excessive mental burden, I guess. Just random tasks that really might not contribute much at all to performance. And so when I think about this, it brings up the idea of available force effort kind of concept, available force to be produced or available force capacity. And this is, at any given time, what is the most amount of force you could potentially produce? So think about it like this. If I'm bench pressing, and it's my first bench press of the day and I'm warmed up, that first bench press is going to have the highest force potential, force capacity of all my movements that day. It's the freshest. So I do that lift. Now, every single rep and thereafter, there is some decrement, at least during that set, between, my potential force, what I could potentially do, and what I could do during my freshest state, right? So if I was the freshest, I could move it at 1 meter a second. And now if I get a little bit tired, my top speed I could possibly move it at might be 0.95 meters a second. But what happens is we often artificially interrupt the ability of recovery to allow us to reach higher force potentials. So what do I mean by that? Well, if we're doing all this excessive stuff during the workout in between sets and reps, and we don't actually allow us to recover, every single rep we perform after the first fresh one is less than what it could potentially be if we just allowed for appropriate rest. Now, I'm not saying do 1,000 single 1-rep movements to allow for most optimal, right? It's most optimal within the context of the set, because for 5 reps, you could produce and lift it as fast as you can with as much intent you can. Each rep is obviously going to be a little less speed than the next, but you're still lifting it at the most available, force you could potentially produce. Now, what happens is, I think we often don't view the significance of sets and reps. That's what I'm trying to get at here. And the point is, each set and rep is designed to elicit a certain response. It is designed, at least in the case of this primary movement, to be performed at the highest level you could. I don't think many people would say I should perform this movement with less effort than I potentially could, or with less intent, especially when developing power, than I potentially could. Instead, we want to think about those sets and reps as opportunities to produce the most amount of force possible. So it's not just a loading opportunity, it's a neural education opportunity to exert that maximal intent, even under slight amounts of fatigue. And so that's where I start to think about, well, why do I sit down and rest and we kind of chat in between sets? Well, because the in-between time allows for the go time during the sets to work at a higher capacity. If during my main sets, I will say I do set number 2, it's 5 reps, and I come down 10%, so I lost 10% of my potential force. If I were to just sit there and relax and recover, I'd recover that, 10% gain and go back to where I was before. But if I did, some random stuff moving around, some dead bugs, some internal, external rotation, I might only recover to 80% or even 95%. And yes, it's a 5% difference and it might not seem like much, but if you add that up over time, over an entire training week and a month, the missed opportunity of force production becomes pretty noticeable. You're performing 5% less than you could. So let's think about that over time. If I were to have the potential, I do 5, let's just say over a month, we'll say, I have 100 sets. And of 100 sets, I could potentially produce 100% effort, right? In that opportunity. Well, over time, if I have 5% decrement, I'm only producing 95%. If we multiply that by the number of sets by, say, the potential load or force output in newtons, it becomes very differentiated as we go through the time course of training, right? That 5% in one day, one acute session might not seem like much. It's the difference between, 100 and 95. That doesn't seem like a lot, but as you continue to go on beyond that one day, the gains that were initially marginal at the beginning begin to, showcase themselves. And so I really look at training in each set as an opportunity for each set and rep to be the best set and rep possible. Really understanding why the heck am I doing a set and rep? It's not like the conclusion of 5 reps is some magical stimulus in the body. Like, oh, we have done 5 reps and now we are ready to roll. No, it is how you perform those 5 reps that matter. It is the stress that your body encounters during those 5 reps. So it's not like somehow numerically the number holds a significant aspect to it. Like, oh, physiologically I've done 5 reps, now we can adapt. No, it's how you perform those 5 reps. So really appreciating every set and rep is what I'm trying to get at. And understanding that, we can take a rest because that rest is for a reason. It's for a purpose. It's so we can get the most out of it. More high quality work, in my opinion, is better work. And finding ways to get high quality work is what we're after. So kind of a rant, I guess. I'm not even sure what the direction of the talk was, other than it was something on my mind and something I personally wanted to discuss. So let me know what you think about it. We're going to keep these videos rolling. I hope you all enjoy, and I appreciate you all for listening.